Must have been something else.
All right, folks, it's a few minutes after. We can let people continue to filter in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Megan?
All right. Let me just start recording. Oh, we are. Okay. Welcome to Ask Us Anything Part 2 webinar hosted by the Santa Cruz County Small Business Development Center. The Santa Cruz SBDC is a group of entrepreneurs that provide free of charge one-on-one business counseling to all businesses up to 500 employees or startups. Thank you to our sponsors, Santa Cruz County Bank. Just a few things before we begin. Please change your Zoom name to your first and last name for attendance and type any questions you have into the chat box. And now I will turn it over to Matthew.
Okay, thank you very much, Megan. So this is part 2. I guess it worked the first time really well, so we're doing it again. We have 5 of our advisors from the SBDC. They're going to give a little update, and then after the update, we get to ask them anything. So get ready for your questions. Again, if you have a question, put it in the chat. It won't be answered right away, but it'll be answered after each one of the advisors gives their update. So let's start off, I think, and I want to ask before we get going, is Tim here? I think Tim is, just want to double check. Okay, Tim is not here. So let's start off with Joy Haloff, sorry.
Hi. Megan, you want to get my screen up, please? Just want to warn you, I'm not an attorney, so obviously what I'm saying can't be considered legal advice, but, you know, been with SBDC for 18 years. I won't say how many more years before that in the human resource field. So we're going to kind of be floating about at that 30,000 foot level because we want to leave it open enough for you to be asking questions. So feel free to put your questions in the chat. If we can't get them answered, we'll, you know, be happy to get a hold of SBDC and see what I can do to assist you with it. So next slide. The next slide is pretty typical of an HR statement. Document, 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 and communicate, communicate, communicate. So that's pretty common in the HR world, but now with the COVID, it's even more critical that things are really well documented. I'm even recommending to the clients that they keep a little book on the side that says, you know, here's what I found, here's what I tried to find out, couldn't find the answer, so here's the decision I made. But things are confusing still with some of the loans, certainly with the unemployment. So just be sure that you're documenting, and that you're communicating. Next slide, please. When I get calls from clients, my first question is, okay, we got surprised by this. How did we shut it down? So it makes a big difference how you notified your staff when you sent them out in the first place. The word furloughed and the word layoff have gotten kind of mixed up together. In reality now, most of them are all converted to layoff no matter what you said, but also then the work from home. So furloughed by the labor commissioner was determined to be just a short term, and they'd be back on the next payroll. So most of them have converted to layoffs, which means you should have been paying them up any vacation time or any accrued pay that they had coming to them at that time. The layoff then required you to do things like give the COBRA notice if you had health benefits that you were providing, or the EDD booklet when you recommended that they apply for unemployment insurance. So the work from home obviously was the big thing there, is whether the person is considered exempt or non-exempt. That depends on whether they had to keep track of their hours, if you had them working just one day, whether they were exempt, that meant you paid them for the full week. So there's a lot of questions about that furlough, work from home, and layoff situation. So if it was verbal, it needs to be documented. If it was in writing, be careful of how it was said, whether you're saying that, you know, it's a temporary thing or we're one big happy family. All those verbal communications are really critical at the same time. And at the time that you sent them out, you should have given them the new Department of Labor employee rights and poster bulletin, which if you didn't, then when you bring them back would be a good time to do that. So next slide, please. So I think Tim's going to probably cover this in more detail, but it's really strongly recommended that you have a workplace protocol plan in place that covers all of the things regarding the COVID requirements for safety, but also how you were going to bring people back, under what conditions, under what order, because that's going to be your insurance policy against things like discrimination, or what to do if somebody does get notified that, or you do find out one of your staff has COVID, then what are you going to do? This plan should be your documentation to go to get that. If you're going to bring them back, what's your staffing plan? What are their new job responsibilities? Do you have a new job description for them? Does that job description change them from being an exempt person to being non-exempt because now their job duties are different? What policies have you amended? Do you have an employee handbook? Then there's a whole bunch of sections in there that need to be updated based on the COVID requirements. And then how are you going to be processing the new people in? You know, are you going to be doing the temperature checks? Any of that kind of thing really needs to be in that offer letter that you send them when you bring them back. And yes, I said offer letter, and most of you are probably not doing that now. We're not doing that, but it's really, really critical with this COVID situation to bring them back with a written offer letter explaining what safety precautions you have taken, plus all of the changes in their criteria and that. And then, of course, the signage and protection, which I believe Tim will probably cover in more detail. So next slide, please. So it's time to return to work. So what's your protocol plan say about bringing them back? Are you bringing them back in phases? Are you bringing them back on staggered shifts? Have you allowed some people to work from home and others not to? What are you going to put in that written offer letter and those revised job descriptions? And many of you are not aware of all of the multiple number of pieces of paper you're supposed to be giving a new hire. Now's the time to get caught up on a new hire checklist and make sure that all those documents are in place. If you're working, you know, the work from home aspect, before it was just a quick thing and it was temporary. If this is more long-term, you've got to be really careful about if you're reimbursing them for reimbursable expenses like cell phone use or their own equipment, you know, what kind of equipment they may require to be at home. Listen to a labor law briefing today that talked about if home is their now workplace and they travel to your place of business, you're now going to be required to be paying them travel pay and travel time to go to your business. So all kinds of things subject to changing. Next slide, please. So decision, you know, it's not always easy to find where the answers are for the questions and that. So we want to be sure that, you know, we're monitoring the records we do take. If you're taking temperatures at the door, it's really important that those documents be kept confidential. They're recommending it not have a log that they sign in with their name and their temperature, because that could be considered an invasion of privacy. So those things, like anything documented like that regarding their safety or their health conditions, needs to be really taken care of by a particular person with a lot of consideration for privacy. Financial records, Larry's going to talk a lot about that. And then just continual communications with employees. As hard as it was for them to go out, it's going to be twice as hard for them to come back. So there needs to be really a lot of communication, a lot of joint meetings, a lot of Zoom meetings. I know we've had enough, but the communication to employees is really, really critical. Next slide, please. So communications, documentation, but communications with your employees, with your customers, with your vendors, and certainly when there's new changes that need to be taken place, as much in advance notice as you can give your employees, the better off you will be. So with that, I'll turn it back to Matt.
Okay, thank you so much, Joy. I actually got texted 2 questions already, so I feel like at the end, a lot of questions are going to be going your way. Okay, let's go to our next update. We have Keith Holtway, and he'll give us a quick review of a simple, easy tool to help you test your pivoting strategy. Take it away, Keith.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. You know, we're living in, as the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, and we certainly are. A lot of businesses that are still here are looking to pivot their business. In other words, you know, they may be doing something, have been doing something a certain way for a long time, and now they're going to have to change the way they do business or change the product that they're selling. And I think pivoting a business is similar in a lot of ways to starting a business. And the first thing you have to do is put it through a couple of filters. And one, is it desirable? In other words, will people buy it? A lot of businesses fail, a lot of efforts fail because businesses offer services or goods that nobody wants to buy. So, you know, is it something customers are going to buy? Secondly, is it viable? In other words, can you make money doing it? And that's really key in this day and age, where a lot of people seeing a reduction in their revenues. Anything new that you have to do really has to be looked at from a variety of different ways. And hopefully with one of the advisors that's part of the SBDC to determine whether or not you can actually make money doing it. And then the last is feasible. And that means, are you the right people to pull it off? Are you, is it something that can be done? Do you need resources that are going to cost you a lot of money? Is it going to be worth it in the long run? And again, do you have the capabilities and the capacity to pull it off? So when you start looking at a new idea to pivot your business, they're the first 3 filters I would put anything through. Next slide, please. This is a tool that I use a lot with clients, either helping them sketch out their initial idea or businesses that are pivoting. I'm using this a lot these days. It's called the Lean Planning Canvas. It actually lives on the Small Business Development Center website, and that's santacruzsbdc.org. If you go to resources and planning tools, this will be there. It's a writable PDF. There's a tutorial that lives right next to it. So download both those documents, read that tutorial and follow the order. The most important 2 blocks on this entire canvas are the early adopters and the customers and the problem you're trying to solve in the marketplace. A lot of businesses fail because the problem isn't worth solving. People aren't interested in it. So as you're shifting your business over, make sure that you're identifying a problem. A lot of restaurants, as I'm sure Tom will talk about in a few minutes, they went from being a dinner house to being a takeout, which they weren't used to doing, and that's a difficult transition. But it's solving a problem in the market where people want to buy something that they don't have to cook. So I think using this planning canvas, getting some help in using it is going to be really key. It identifies all the key aspects of any successful business. It's on a single sheet. It's been used over and over again. It's taught in a lot of universities. I highly recommend downloading it and using this tool. Once you have an idea sketched out, you're probably going to have to create a unique value proposition around your shift. And I think a good unique value proposition will incorporate the problem that you've identified into that unique value proposition. And it's also going to focus in on the results that your customers are going to get from your particular service or product. And last but not least, if you can identify a problem that is worth solving, you're halfway to being successful. And the rest of it is going to be getting help and getting guidance. So Any questions, feel free to ask. I would certainly recommend that everybody on the call reach out to the Small Business Development Center. We are here to help. Thank you, Matthew.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Keith. So like Keith mentioned, if you have a question, definitely put it in the chat and we'll answer it at the end. It's so funny. I've already got a couple text for questions, which is funny, but make sure we put it in the chat. Okay, let's have our next advisor. We're going to have Larry Hebert. That'll give our next update. Let's see if Larry's there.
All right, I was trying to get a spreadsheet to show you, but you called me too quick.
I'm sorry. I could talk about you for a little bit if you like.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Yeah, I was going to put it on. It wasn't going to fit on this one. I put it on the regular slides, but I thought maybe the screen. As I've talked about a lot, and I talk to all my clients, the number one asset you have in your company is cash. And when I look at a company, I kind of look at it as black and white, and it's about numbers to me. Everything you have turns into a number. So the goal is, from a cash flow perspective, to have more cash than you do expenses at the end. And obviously from profitability, you want to have profit at the end, which means you have more gross profit than you do expenses against it. So when we first started through the pandemic, we looked at creating a 12-week cash flow plan to see if you get through the 12 weeks. People were concerned about having money. You knew the EIDL loan wouldn't come in by then. There may be some PPP money, but did you have the ability to get through the next 12 weeks, which would have been through, I think, July 4th, which you're coming up on. So now that businesses are reopening, it's going to be critical to really forecast your cash and profitability from now, July through December, to make sure that you have enough money to run your business. If there's any issues, that you'll be able to find out what they are. So you want to be proactive in managing your cash and your profitability to ensure success and liquidity. And if you don't do that, what happens is, there's an old saying that if you don't run your business is going to run you. So this puts you, if you're able to do this puts you in a position to really run your business and be able to be proactive in finding solutions, because you're going to look at a problem between now and December, and you'll be able to see if there's an issue, and you take care of it now, and you find a solution to it now, whether it's if you have to lower an expense, put off a payment, have a sale to get more revenue, get a loan, put some personal funds in, whatever it's going to be. And so, so this is critical to the success of your business to do this. Now the loan, if you got an EIDL loan, the proceeds of your EIDL loan were really for working capital to jumpstart your business. And you need to use this as intended. What happens a lot of times is, I use the analogy that if you throw dirt on top of weeds, the weeds go away and it looks great till the sun comes out, and a couple of months later the weeds come back. Well, if you don't manage your business properly and you just use this money and you look at this, the EIDL funds or a loan that you get as income, as revenue, that's going to be recurring, it's going to go away because your business is not supporting itself. So you need to use the funds that you have. As I say, treat it like gold. If you don't have to use them, that's great. Keep it as a safety valve. It's an insurance policy. But it's meant, the EIDL loan is meant to jumpstart your business, to use for your capital, working capital for the business, to make sure that you can get through the times when, if you weren't open, your startup phase, and maybe have some left over when you're up and running in case something comes up. So you want to complete review and adjustments needed to avoid the cash problems that you may have. So as you look at the next 6 months of your business, and we have a form for this, SBDC, we've developed a form that we'll be happy to send you to use. I'll be happy to help you with it personally, that you put the numbers in, it calculates everything for you. It'll show you between now and December where you're going to be cash-wise, where you're going to be profitability-wise, and where areas are that you can adjust it to make sure that you get where you want to get. And so when you make these adjustments, it allows you to avoid issues and to come up with solutions now. As they say, would you rather be proactive or reactive? And I think we'd all rather have a week or a month or so to make a decision rather than 5 minutes. And so that's what this is meant to do, is to try to help you do that. So in this slide, it's about managing your cash, using your money wisely, and being able to predict where you're going to be and make adjustments so you don't run into issues. Next slide. Okay, so when you look at forecasting between now and December, you want to look at what revenue you have coming in, you want to look at what loans you have to pay, including credit cards, what are your operating expenses going to pay, and what are some non-operating expenses like if you have a loan payment, if you have a credit card payment. These are not part of your operating expenses in terms of a loan. Just your interest would be something on your profit and loss, but the principal that you pay on your loan will come off your balance sheet. So it's money coming out of your business, but it may not show on your operating expenses or your net profit. So these are things that you really want to look at. Again, this is what the sheet does for you. So whatever money you have coming in, wherever it's going to come from, if you're putting personal funds in, loan, revenue, any of that nature is the cash you have coming in. And then the cash you have coming out are going to be your operating expenses and any non-operating expenses that you have to spend cash on. Those will all impact your business. And the template we have designed for you is to enter all of this in and be able to see it spread out over a 6-month period. At the bottom, you'll be able to look and see, am I over or under for cash? And then you make adjustments, because you cannot have a negative cash position. You either have zero cash or you have money, but you can't have a negative cash position. So if you have a negative $1,000 cash position at the end of a month, we need to figure out how we're going to get rid of that. Do we need to move an expense from one month to the next? Do we need to call somebody and say we're going to delay a payment? Do we have to have a sale? Do we have to put our own money in? But somehow we have to get that to at least to zero and hopefully above. Next slide. Okay. So once you complete a review, then you complete your review, you make your adjustments, and you try to avoid your losses from operations. You track this monthly, so you have this set up for a 6-month period. And we also have a template you can use on a monthly basis to really track side by side, what did I project and what actually happened. And you get this information from your profit and loss, that if you have QuickBooks, from your profit and loss. And then we look at your balance sheet on a reduction or increase of assets. We'll tell you where the other cash went. And then we can manage this. And when you manage it on a monthly basis, week by week, you can make decisions even closer to a week. So if you look at you look where you are, if you projected to spend $1,000 on advertising and you spent $900 already, and you got 3 weeks to go, you say, what happened? I need to make an adjustment here. So you don't have to wait till the end where there's a problem. So doing this puts you in charge of your business, and this is what you need to do. If you're going to eliminate financial mistakes and stress, and I don't know anybody that doesn't have a financial stress in their business if they don't watch it, you can use these templates to really manage your business, control your cash, make proactive decisions, and make sure that you don't spend money needlessly and that you have the cash available to run your business. So don't leave your business to chance, your success to chance. Take control and create your success, and you have the ability to do it. So we have, as I said, we have templates that are already designed to do this for you. You can get a hold of Jennifer, and she can get a hold of me, and I'll make sure you get it, and I'm happy to work through it with you. But don't leave this to chance, because if you do, it's going to cause stress, and it could mean that your business doesn't make it. We're in a really crazy time right now. And if ever you needed to manage your cash and manage your finances, it's today.
Okay, thank you so much, Larry. And hopefully you can hang around for at the end for our Q&A. Okay, next up we have Tom Bruce, and he'll be discussing advice on restaurant recovery tactics.
Sorry, you caught me by surprise there, Matt. So my stuff is restaurant specific, but parts of it will apply to any business. And we've already touched on a bit of this. But from a reopening standpoint, one of the things that's required is a safety master plan. And there was a lot of negligence in this initially. The health departments didn't follow up on it. The counties were not very clear on what they were looking for. And I just read an article last night about several places being shut down because they did not have an action plan. So we do have an action plan for you. If in fact you're a restaurant and you would like to get a copy of the template, it's designed to be customized to your own place. But what I did was take the state guidelines and the Santa Cruz County guidelines, and this was about 3 weeks ago, and create an actual action steps that were based on the on the guidelines to be implemented in a restaurant. And several of my people have used it. They've made some minor modifications to it, but it seems to be working well. And most importantly, the counties are happy with it. So we have that for you. If you'd like, just get a hold of us and we'll send you a copy of it. It's done in Word, so it's easy to modify. Can we go to the next screen, please? I think we've already touched on this, but let me go ahead and then we'll go into more of the restaurant specific stuff. One of the things I did not mention on the last page is that there is a PDF version and an Excel version of a wellness check, which logs in 2 or 3 questions plus the temperature. And that's universal to any business that's actually checking people in, has a wellness check station at the back door. Some of the things that we're, again, recommending to our people is lots of signage, and this is also a requirement, on the interior and the exterior to let people know, about mask guidelines, sanitizing, hand sanitizers, things like that. This is for the public as well as your employees. The other thing that I think is a good idea is to post the plan on your website. So the people that go to your website, and a lot of people are just going there to see if you're open and if you're doing dine-in or takeout or what's going on, so that they see that you've been proactive, you've got this in place, and that's designed to not just communicate the requirements to them, but to create some confidence that you've done that. Having a plan and not adhering to it is one of the things that I'd really discourage you from doing. We have a number of restaurants here. I'm based in Capitola. Locally, I mean, they're within a mile of my house, and they're open for dine-in and patio, and there's no social distancing, there's no guideline adherence. And I think eventually it's going to cause problems both with their clientele and with the environmental health departments. It certainly should if it doesn't. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so as a restaurateur, and I don't know if we have any on here, but and this kind of reflects what Keith said. There's no more business as usual. And Keith has got a number of really good programs on leaner operations and generating gross profit dollars. We're working with all of our clients now on a 50% reduction in menu items. Just because you're going to have a significant reduction in customer flow. I've read or reviewed 2 or 3 statistical studies the last week or so, and about 10% on average of the clientele are not planning on going to restaurants again anywhere in the near future. About 10% are ready to go right away, and the 80% in the middle is really kind of holding back and planning on staging themselves in. So not only are you going to have a reduction in seating, but you're going to have a reduction in interest in dining in. And can we move on to the next slide, please? So when you're reducing your product line, there's 3 things that we want to take a look at. One is popularity, and any business has product popularity information that comes through their point of sale. Restaurants are notorious for overbuilding their menus because they feel that they really do need 5 vegetarian dishes, even though they're a steakhouse. Or they can't decide which one of those vegetarian dishes they like the most. So bring it down, make it simple, and popularity is one of the 3 key issues there. Profitability is the other thing, and what I keep consistently hearing with operators is food cost percentage. food cost percentage is not really the issue any longer in a situation like this. Contribution margin is the difference between selling price and cost of goods. And this is the amount of dollars we generate. You know, I don't really care if something is a $50 or 50% food cost if it's generating $25 in gross profits, because this is the time when you need dollars to pay your overhead expenses, your occupation costs, so on and so forth. And the last thing is ease of production. When we're dealing with fewer people, the food has to go out faster, the product has to go out faster, so that we can turn the tables more quickly. The days of encouraging people to linger for coffee and dessert are gone. We need them to get up and leave so we can get some more butts in those seats and kind of keep it moving. We're also faced with supply chain issues, and this can be a kicker for some of the people. You know, we had an abundance of product when we first shut down because it was in the pipeline. Became very inexpensive, lots of it around, and not many consumers. Now we have supply chain issues in things like the beef market, especially in the proteins, but we're seeing the same thing in some of the dairy products and produce. And I think it's going to be kind of an up and down roller coaster as far as commodity availability, pricing, so on and so forth, along with consumer tastes. And unfortunately, the individual who's going to talk about marketing and changing tastes is not going to be with us today, but that's really something that especially restaurants have to take into consideration. Kind of going back to your lean business plan there, Keith. Next slide. This is really just repeating what Joy said. So I think we can move on from this. And I think that may be my last slide. I'm hoping so. Oh, reduced capacity. Okay, so again, we're looking at anywhere from 25 to 50% reduced capacity in restaurants. The thing that's going to hurt many of our operators is the reduction in bar service or elimination in bar service. I know it certainly bothers Keith and I not to be able to go to a bar. But there's a lot of high dollar contribution there, especially in wine sales in the bar. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind is takeout and kind of thinking out of the box. Takeout options are a big one. People have become used to it. Again, the same statistics are indicating that a lot of people are going to stay with takeout. And I've seen some really sort of innovative programs. There's a restaurant over in the Valley that is selling meal kits and then doing webinars to actually produce the meal right out of their kitchen. So, you know, this is the equivalent of having a number of people in the restaurant. If you're doing dinner for 4 and you sold 10 of those, you know, that's 40 people that you couldn't fit in your restaurant. So, you know, I think you have to think this stuff through. And this is kind of part of the no more business as usual thought process that we're trying to go through. Next slide. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you so much, Tom. Just to let you know, as a vegetarian, I actually like having the 5 options, but.
Would you go to a steakhouse to get them?
Yeah, they're probably not the best vegetarian options, but my wife likes the steak, so I'm gonna go.
Okay.
You know what, actually, I think we want to skip back. We have Tim Connor. Go ahead, let's invite him. Let's go back to the original, I think the first slides, if we can, Megan, and let's invite Tim. And Tim is going to discuss safety and the protection of staff and customers to assure the continued success of reopening of the small business community.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. Appreciate being part of the group of advisors today. I think I'd like to take a little bit of what Tom just talked about and use it as a bit of an example in what I want to talk about, and that is, how do you really assure that you're going to keep your business open? Tom mentioned that there is some enforcement efforts now going on with places who have not put an accurate and compliant plan together, but also a reluctance on the part of some individuals to really pay too much attention to it and to be compliant with putting those efforts in place before they open their business. There's a lot of details to keeping your business successful, and they are very much compromised right now by all that has been talked about up to this point. Sort of the silent killer of the business right now, though, is the virus. I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about the virus itself a little bit and explained a little bit. I showed a couple of videos as to how it spreads. The dilemma for us today is really, it isn't something that we can see. It isn't a telephone call we get about a product not being available. But it is there, and it's becoming, unfortunately, more prevalent again. But I think the focus of what you have to do to really keep your business open and keep taking the steps to get it back to a success level where it's going to be profitable for you, you have to continue to pay attention to a couple things. You have to pay attention to the safety issues for your staff and your customers. We've all heard anecdotally stories of staff being sick and spreading to customers. What happened to those businesses after that public relations piece got out there? We've read stories of individuals who claim to have known better, like the nurse down in California who went to a bar with her friends to have a birthday party, and all 16 of them ended up getting tested positively within 2 weeks. With the openings, people follow their human nature. Okay, we're open, we're safer, we can do this, and they don't pay attention. You have to talk to your customers in some form or another, using your websites, putting up the required information before they come in, maybe giving them a little bit of additional information once they're in your store, depending on circumstances and how your store works. But consumer education, and the more you're able to provide to them, it also is a marketing tool to them, because you're telling them you are wanting them to be safe. You do want them back for their business, but you want to keep them safe while they're there. But most important, you have to put that plan together that's been talked about. If you need help doing it, there's lots of resources with the center to help you, but you have to go back and revisit it. And then you have to go back and make sure that you adhere to it. Having worked in the medical field, you're constantly asked to put policies and practices in place. When you're reviewed and surveyed, everybody looks at those policies and practices and then goes ask your staff, are you following them? In some respects, what you hang on the outside wall is what people look at as they come in. You can go to the next slide now, please. I wanted to give you just a couple of pieces of data, but they kind of talk about where we are today. There's been, in the last 14, there's been almost 50,000 new cases reported in California, almost 900 new deaths reported. On Tuesday, there were 6,000 new cases reported. The previous high was back in June, and it was 4,500. All the time before that, the number of cases when we were sheltering in place was much lower. I think there's a couple of things that on the positive side, the hospitals have figured out how to better treat the virus, and they're having progress that they didn't have in the beginning. They have more equipment. They have staff that are now used to the situation and they're more comfortable in treating. So they are certainly helping in terms of the severity of the illness and the number of deaths. But at the same time, the spread of the virus continues, and it will continue without the safety measures in place. Next slide, please. I wanted to take it down to Santa Cruz County. To date, there have been 330 cases, 2 deaths. We see that every night. The piece of real note, though, is that on the 23rd, they reported 24 new cases of the virus in the county. Prior to that, throughout the entire 3 or 4 months of this issue, there's been no higher than 10 cases reported, and only on 2 days. And most of them have, in Santa Cruz, have reported deaths somewhere between 3 and 5 on average. We reported on the 23rd of June, a few days ago, 24 new cases. That's an incredible number to jump in one day, given the history of this county. When you break it down, there are parts of the county, particularly Watsonville, that account for most of the numbers. But by the same token, there's proximity to all of us that live in the county. There's opportunity for all of us to be together in the county in different ways. And while the majority may be there, there still are numbers that are going up throughout the rest of the county. Next slide. I want to just talk generally and express a couple of ways to look at this. As you work in your place of business, you should try to understand the ways in which the virus can spread. It spreads certainly by mouth, by droplets, as we've all heard now for the umpteenth time. And you're not really protected from it, even with some of the masks. But what happens with all of us having a mask on is we prevent an enormous amount of the droplets from spreading through the air. It's unseen. Some of the research that's gone on in testing this indicates that someone who sneezes fairly hard can spread the droplets as much as 8 to 10 feet, depending on the room that they're in. The contact issue with it is been proved to be mostly wrong from what they talked about early on. However, by the same token, people who cover their mouth with their hand and sneeze into it, take that hand and do something with it. They open the door, they put it on a table, they put it on a doorknob, and it starts to spread. Doesn't last as long, and it depends on surfaces. But again, all of these are opportunities for the virus to spread and to infect others. And so you walk in your front door, look around and think of the ways that it can spread and how you can protect your staff and those who are in themselves. As you post education for folks, as you tell people what you're trying to do to protect them, you should absolutely encourage them, and now it's mandatory, that they wear masks in most instances. Some people don't want to wear masks. Probably a better option not to serve them. Because others will look and react to it and may not come back, because they're looking to you as the business owner, as a manager, to protect them. And if they're going to do business with you, that's an expectation as a customer. And it's something we have to pay a lot of attention to. Realistically, as we all sheltered in place, we also did a lot of personal hygiene, hand washing in particular. Having worked in the medical world and hospitals, I've been in units where there's extreme infections. People use the protective equipment. They use masks. They cover their face and their eyes at times. Hand washing, wearing a mask, and cover your face when you cough or sneeze. And as a business owner, as you disinfect, as you wipe up a table after a new customer has been there and gone, all of those things do a tremendous amount of invisible work to protect your building. It may not seem like it's much, and it may cost you some extra dollars to do it, but it certainly is the key to keeping the virus under control, in my mind. And one other thing I just want to talk a little bit about, and this kind of goes to the notion of opening a bar down the road. And one of the things that is being found out now in terms of the spread is there, yes, there have been some big events that have created a cluster. However, an awful lot of this is really coming from personal gatherings. In Watsonville, a lot of it is in the living conditions of the farm workers and how proximate they are to one another and how easy it is to spread. But as I mentioned earlier in the example of the RN who went out to the birthday party, it was a personal gathering and it spread the virus immensely out of that bar. If in your business, you pay attention to how people are gathering in your business and you set some limits in terms of how they can gather. Typically in a bar, if I'm there and I know people, I'll wander from table to table, person to person. Well, maybe it's better for the near future to bring a group in and keep them reasonably isolated. Here's your table, you need to stay at it, we'll deliver to you. Please do not get up and wander. Because I think to a large measure, we can make things more successful. We can gather people together in small groups and help solve some of the frustration and the emotional stress that's out there about people wanting to get out and do business. But also, if you give them some of those guardrails, I think that they will also work with you to take advantage of an opportunity to go to the bar, an opportunity to go dine. But I totally agree with Tom also. It's going to be a long time before a lot of the folks that are in that middle part of the continuum who are really going to make the decision, okay, I don't think the risk is out there for me. I'm going to go try again, especially seeing some of the rises in the cases over the last couple of months. On a personal basis, I was supposed to go to Arizona for a good friend of ours' 80th birthday a week ago. We talked about it a month ago, said, okay, we'll go. Things were pretty reasonable in Arizona at that point. Kansas, California, New York, and others, if you fly back to them from Arizona these days, you have to go into quarantine. And their numbers have become sort of the poster child of what happens here when people gather too quickly and don't pay attention to some of the rules. On balance, I think there's lots out there and there's a lot of folks doing a very good job at this. They're working very hard at it. But it's something we have to continue to go back and revisit and say, okay, this is where we're going to go. And this is what we got to do to protect our business. So good luck. And again, there's a lot of information available through the center. If you need it, please let us know and contact us. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tim, for that information. So we got a bunch of questions. We're going to do a Q&A. Again, if you have a question, you can put it over in the chat and I will ask it. We have a little bit of time here. And for the advisors, since I can't see you, just unmute yourself and answer the question. That would be fine. So first question here kind of goes along with, in a way, what Tim was talking about, since the numbers of COVID-19 are escalating in some states, including ours. What issues should we be aware of or start thinking about if a second wave happens and our business needs to close down or slow down again? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have been thinking about that more in a lot of different ways. And I think the true answer to that in the first instance is going back and looking at the plan you put together for safety and making sure that what you put together is sufficient now that you've been open and you've seen some of the issues come to your front door and you've tried to deal with them, and put some other measures in place. Maybe you become a little more stringent, but I do think that if you do it in the right way and you do it in an educative way with your customer, they're going to be appreciative of it and they're going to come back. I know as I first started to wander out to get takeout, there were a few places I would go and I'd feel very comfortable. There were a couple other places I haven't been back to because I didn't really feel that the procedures they had in place were going to protect me. I'm probably a little more skeptical because of my background in the medical world, but at the same time, it's very important for people to feel comfortable. I think the second thing to do is to pay a lot of attention and listen to the staff who are working for you, because they'll tell you the story of what's going on at a countertop, what's going on as they hand out food at takeout, what's going on in terms of people asking about what's going on for cleanliness, disinfecting, et cetera, as they come to your store. Build them into your process. Give them the information that they can talk to your customers so that your customers know that it's going to work. And I think, you know, again, going back to a couple of the earlier presentations, you have to be very lean in terms of how you open your business. You have to be very willing to make changes in it quickly. There's lots of examples now out there of what can be done, what can't be done. Talk to some of the folks that you partner with, suppliers. They've seen different things that they've traveled from one, or as they've worked with one of their partners in other ways. I really hope we don't have to face the notion of cutting back. There's three or four states right now that are starting to drastically do it. But I really do believe that if the personal gatherings are limited and managed and corralled, as I would say, and protected, and accept the protection and comply with it, we're going to have more cases. But at the same time, I think the healthcare system itself may be a little more prepared to deal with them a little more effectively, and we won't have the seriousness or the deaths. And hopefully, I mean, they've done a lot of research on who's most susceptible. So I think those folks are starting to protect themselves and are not as visible, and hopefully are not visible in the numbers either. But
Great. Okay, thanks. Does anybody else have a comment on that? If not, we'll move to the next. Nope. Okay. Next question. Is this a good time to buy a business? What are the pros and cons? We'd like to answer that one. I'm looking, I see some smiles here, see some thoughts. That's a tough one.
There we go.
Okay, there, Larry. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about it. No, I was saying that that's a really good question, but it's a really difficult one right now because we don't know what's going to happen. Business, I would say right now, values of businesses because of the uncertainty have probably gone down a little bit. And it's really going to be difficult. It could be difficult to get funding for it right now. And without any, there's a track record in the past, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future. So I would say right now is a really difficult time to really look at buying a business. You just don't know what's going to happen, and it's really an uncertain time. It's not something I would do at this point, unless it was something that someone's almost just giving it away. But I wouldn't. Yeah, but that's really not what people sell businesses. But it's. I think it's kind of a wait and see at this point. That'd be my. That's what I would do. I would wait and see. I wouldn't jump into buying something right now.
Yeah, and I don't think the banks would let you either.
Yeah, I think funding's going to be tough to get.
Why is that, Keith? Why are banks not funding at this point?
Well, yeah, my connection up here is cutting in and out, so my apologies. But because the banks are just as uncertain as everybody else. I mean, they're looking at past profit and loss statements, past tax returns for the business to see if the value is going to be there. But even if it's a good value, whether or not they're going to trust the future remains to be seen. And most banks are pretty risk adverse when it comes to where they're putting their money. So I think it's going to be difficult. And if they do, it's the person who's applying for the loan is going to have to put up more collateral and reduce the risk for the lender, so.
Matt, I have an example of a client not buying a business, but has been a successful business or a winery. And they were working with a bank and got a line of credit, got an auto loan, got another loan. Everything was fine before the pandemic hit. She now went back to try to get a $35,000 equipment loan, and it could be collateralized and everything. And they told her, you got to wait 6 months. The bank's tightened up. We're not looking at making any loans right now. And that's on an established business, profitable business. that had already loaned her money that she's begun to pay back. She got a great track record. So things are tightening up.
For sure. Hey, Keith, while I have you, someone asked about the, let me see, where was it? The planning canvas. Okay,
Yeah.
where do we see that on the SBDC website? Where do we go for that?
If you go to the main page and you go to resources, you click on that, you'll see a link for planning tools, and you want the lean canvas and the tutorial, and just follow the tutorial in the progression as you fill out that canvas.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question in the chat from Daniel. There's a few different elements of it, so you can pick which element you want to answer. But how will salary be defined for sole proprietors is based upon owner draws or what line on Schedule C, or how will this be defined? And thus, what should one's bookkeeper be asked to document for the PPP application? Any aspect of that?
Yeah, for sole proprietors, they are calculating their quote unquote payroll on line 31 under Schedule C, which is the net income. They divide that by 12 and then multiply it by 2.5. And that would be what they would receive as a PPP loan.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next question. What is the, and this is probably going to Joy here, what is the biggest HR challenge small businesses are facing right now?
I think right now it is the information they don't know. You know, like I said earlier about sending people out, and we're so used to these electronic things like cell phones and that most of them sent people out on mass emails, and they're bringing them back in mass emails, and that's just not what's going to be in their best interest. They really need to have it be individual communications with individual people. And I know that sounds horrendous, but just doing mass emails is going to get them in more trouble than not. It's really difficult, other than through SBDC, I have found, to find things on the internet, because if you're not careful, you're pulling up information off the internet that is not California. And we are very, 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 very different here. So they have to be careful that the information they're getting is California based, and that they're just being really documenting.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's the next question. What if a customer comes in, because I've had many, they go into my store, but do not follow social distancing, they're not wearing a mask, etc. And I've told them multiple times to remedy the situation. How do I handle that situation? This might not be the best question for our panel, but let's see if anybody has any questions on any answer on that.
Well, I think one of the things is when we talked about bringing people back in phases, I think it's really smart to bring people back who are, haven't found the right word yet, but the traffic cops, not only for employees, but for customers that they can walk up with a very soft glove and say, I'm sorry, but we'd love to have you be here, or we'd love to have you come in here, but we're required to require you to have a mask. So please, you know, cooperate with us and put the mask on so we can serve you best. I think that's a big part. I think they also have to be ready to really police or watch the staff, that the staff is setting the right example.
Yes, for sure. Thank you. Okay, we're going to end off with one last question. You know, it seems a lot of doom and gloom, this COVID-19, which it is, and this has been a traumatic experience on so many people in so many different ways. But has there been any positive things that you've seen that have come out of the last 3 months? If maybe how somebody has dealt with the situation, how they've pivoted. Is there anything that you've seen that's, you know, to give us some encouragement for small businesses in our area?
Well, I think one of the things is watching the community come together.
Mm-hmm.
You're watching the banks come together, watching the Downtown Association and the Economic Council that Brandon works with. the community's coming together to find different solutions to help businesses stay open and help them get to the next level. And, I know we've said this before, the number of banks, County Bank has been a tremendous proponent of really working with people to try to, for the PPP loan to keep people employed, and other banks have in the area as well. But I just think there are a lot of associations in Santa Cruz that are offering low interest loans. SBDC, other types of organizations are offering free consulting to help people get through this. And there's a lot of positive things that have happened. What occurred was a tragedy, what's going on right now, but it pulls us together. And Santa Cruz is one of those communities. I've been here for 45 years. One of those communities that just pulls together. Everybody pulls together, and that's what's happening now. People on the screen right now, and the whole community are coming together. But I've seen a lot of positive come out of it in a really bad situation. It's just like the earthquake. The earthquake was horrible, but a lot of positive things came out of it in terms of this community pulling together and getting back where we were.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Larry. Any other comments on that?
I think it also gave our businesses an opportunity to see where the holes were in their processes, and our businesses as well as our government, because like unemployment, I don't think they put any money into that system in unemployment for years and years and years, and they're finding that's what stopped them from being effective. So it gives our small businesses an opportunity to really look at their processes, what has worked and what hasn't worked, what they found out that they didn't know before, and be ready to be a more robust organization.
Yes, for sure, Joy. Thank you. Okay, well, I think that's it. Again, what a valuable resource the SBDC is. Look at this advice that you can get from our advisors. So I encourage you to go to santacruzsbdc.org. If you're not already getting advice and getting resources from the SBDC, again, what a valuable resource. And I will give it right back to Jennifer or Megan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you to all of our advisors for your insight and expertise. If you have more questions for any of our advisors, you can contact them through the Santa Cruz County SBDC. Thank you so much to today's sponsor, the Santa Cruz County Bank. Please be on the lookout in your email for our short evaluation. We welcome any and all feedback. And you can find our upcoming webinars and apply for business counseling at santacruzsbdc.org. Thank you, everybody.